Welcome back to the Female Dating Strategy, the meanest female only dating podcast on the internet. I am your host, Diana.
And I am Rose. And today we're discussing something really important that Diana brought up at the end of our last discussion. She was like, hey, I think we need to talk about boundaries in general and common sense when setting these boundaries. And I was like, you know what? I love boundaries, and boundaries have been one of the main ways I've turned my life around. So, yes, let us discuss boundaries. Today, we're leading off with the question, do you have a right to be cautious, or are you just paranoid?
I mean, you know what? All of you people are just paranoid. Men are so sweet and they're so nice and they're so wonderful. And like, there's absolutely no harm in just giving them all your trust and having absolutely no boundaries with them whatsoever.
Do you hear how crazy that is, listeners? That is how crazy it is when people are like, oh, well, you're just being paranoid. Like, oh, it's just your life on the line, but you should just really throw caution to the wind.
You know what I find strange is like it's perfectly acceptable to tell children like avoid strange men because of stranger danger, but for whatever reason, you tell women to have stranger danger with men. It's like, well, not all men, and it's like, how is that relevant? You know, how does that work? Or how are they like dangerous to children but not dangerous to women? You know what I mean?
Yeah, they metamorphosize into like some harmless avuncular figure all of a sudden when it's a heterosexual woman of grown age. Like, you're so right. And listen, this is something we tell children as well. We're like, listen, if you're in trouble, seek out a woman to help you.
Exactly. When you don't know what's going on and you need help, never go to a man because men are not trustworthy. And the crazy thing is, men know this too. Like Rose, I was just telling Rose, I was talking about how men in general, when you're not dating them and then you bring up like how paranoid you have to be around men. And again, nobody wants to be paranoid, right? Nobody goes into an interaction with another human being or a strange human being and says, oh, you know what's fun? Like thinking about the worst shit they could possibly do to me. They could dismember me. They could murder me. They could rape me. Oh my God, this is so much fun. It's not fun for anyone to have to think like that. To always be on alert, to always have your keys between your fingers, to constantly like evaluate what route is the safest route to take home.
But you're right, it is aging us. And of course, like we're always talking about anti-aging. Well, this is like the ultimate anti-aging move that you can make. Is like, how can you minimize the risk to yourself? And again, like I hate when that we have to think about risk analysis with every part of our daily lives, but we do. That's the world we live in. And you know, I think this is why women, especially as like the rise of true crime podcasts and TV shows, which by the way, well, I do encourage women to watch a couple episodes because it becomes very clear what the pattern is. I remember when I was a kid, I was obsessed with serial killers. So I read a ton of stories about them. And of course, most serial killers' victims are women. And I was like, wait a minute. Why aren't they killing the men? Why are they only killing women? And that's when it became apparent to me like there's a deep pathology here, right? So that's what we're dealing with when we're dealing with men. And as Diana mentioned, whether you're a child or a woman, the risk is the same. We're vulnerable because we're weaker. It's just a biological fact.
Also, the other thing I think is that people think that their fear is not justified and they find reasons to justify their fear of a situation. And I have to really push back against that because if you're in a position where you are justifying your fear, if you're like, oh, okay, I don't have a reason to be afraid of this person, I just am. And you're like, well, that's not a reasonable enough reason to not engage with this person. Like, this is why The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker is such an important book to read because it tells you, I don't think women have understood that over the course of our evolution, we respond to certain stimuli, certain triggers that make us more afraid without us realizing it. Maybe it's a situation you haven't encountered before, so you're like, oh, why am I feeling so nervous? Why do I feel so nervous? But really, what ends up happening is that your body is responding to a situation where you're feeling fear. And really being able to recognize and give space to that fear is the most important step. I think people think they need to be able to vocalize every emotion they have. Sometimes it's okay to not vocalize it. It's not important for you to be like, I'm vocalizing this fear. What's more important is just you feel the fear.
You recognize it and honor it.
Exactly.
Diana, this is such an excellent point. Well, you always make such excellent points, my good lady. But this idea of like, you don't have to vocalize and articulate and rationalize, particularly in the recesses of your own mind and body, why you feel a certain way. Okay? The fact that we think we have to justify, even in the innermost selves, I'm not sure, but I think it was Simone de Beauvoir who talked about, you know, the internalization of the male gaze, where like, even from within, you're gazing out from the prison of like the superimposed male gaze that women have been taught to assess themselves with. So even within the privacy of our own mind, we can't just say, I'm not comfortable. It's like, well, I'm not comfortable because XYZ, because we've been taught that under the surveillance of men, we have no right to our feelings unless we can somehow gain their approval through whatever sort of rationalization or justification they will accept. So if you find yourself going through this, elaborate process of trying to explain to yourself in the privacy of your own mind why you're feeling a certain way, that's automatically a red flag. Just accept that you fucking feel that way and do with that what you will.
Let me put this really simply, right? Like, okay, let's say that you exist in a place where there are no volcanoes, and then one day randomly there's a volcano eruption, which is strange because you don't live around volcanoes. Are you going to spend your time being like, what I feel is fear? Fear. Interesting. Maybe it's time to run. Maybe I should pick up my suitcase and stuff it with stuff that I should keep in there. Should I take my pet? Should I leave my husband? What should I do? You know what I mean? Like in a situation where there's a real fear-based response, you would never once think any action you take in that fear-based response is irrational because it's about survival. And I think the more people realize it's about survival, the less guilt you need to feel about feeling certain kinds of ways about men. Like I've often met men who are very, very charming, very, very flattering, and they ask me questions which at that moment I'm like, that's a strange thing for him to ask me. I wonder why he's asking me. And immediately it puts my haunches up because I'm like, that's a very overfamiliar question for someone who's essentially a stranger. I don't care how cute I found you. I don't know why you're entitled to know what my family's social security number is or what their financial history looks like. Like, that's strange to me.
If you're in an Uber or a taxi and they're like, oh, where are you going? Are you meeting your husband there? Oh, do you live alone? Like all of a sudden I'm like, excuse me, you literally have the address to my home and you're asking me these questions. This cannot be for good reasons.
Exactly. And I do this, like, leave men. I do this with anybody. Like, well, I live with my family, and whenever one of us is out of town, there'll always be questions about where is that person? Where are they going? When are they coming back? And I always think it's like, this is none of your fucking business.
Exactly.
And I always lie. I always make up shit. I'm always like, oh, they're coming back today. They're like, where are they? Oh, I think they just went to, church, and I think they'll be back in like half an hour.
But do you hear how insane this is? That you've had to just normalize lying because we are so often given the most inappropriate questions in the most inappropriate settings, and we still have to be conciliatory.
Yep. And honestly, here's the thing. When you live in a society where you're going to be punished for not like playing along, again, that's why all my advice is always with the condition of like, if you live in a society where women are not easily forgiven for being abrasive in general, I honestly think it's better to just give a lie, because what are the chances? Like, you can just polish up your family on the lie and be like, every single person was in tap dancing class. Okay, that's the lie we're going to go with. All right, moving on. Because the thing is, even with them, they're like, oh, so when are you going to travel? How long are you going to travel for? Where are you traveling to? And I'm like, none of this is your business. None of this is your business.
They feel entitled to it. And that's the attitude we're dealing with in every situation with men. They have been taught to demand and own every part of us that they can, even if they're absolute strangers. And we have been entrained to be as conciliatory and diplomatic as possible. And we've been taught, oh my God, why couldn't she just tell me no? Why didn't she just tell me she didn't want to give me her number? Well, because men kill women if they turn them down for giving them their number. Like, there are so many situations we've seen time and time again where, like, you cannot rely on the goodwill and good faith of men when it comes to dealing with what they want. And if what they want is you are in danger, girl.
Yep. And also, here's a tip for people who have a really hard time rejecting men when it comes to things like phone numbers and stuff. I definitely don't feel any guilt about that. I'm like, my phone is just for my friends and my family, and right now you are neither, so I don't need to give you my number. And I always do it in a very flirtatious way. Like, I turn them down really flirtatiously. So that way they think that, like, I'm just being coy. But really, it's like, I don't want to give them my number. And I definitely know I'm not going to see them again. So I'm like, whatever will get you off my back is what I'm going to say. But for people who do really struggle with having boundaries with men, especially when it comes to asking for numbers and things, you feel cornered, you feel like, or if they're really one of those pushy kinds that are like, show me that you've actually called me on your number and like, I'm going to call you, So there's this really cool app. I don't know if it's still around, but you can check it out. It's called Text Now. And basically, Text Now gives you like a fake number. And the way it works is that it acts like a real number. Like, you can call people with that number. You can message people with that number. And I really use it for like blocking and deleting men from my life as well. Because what happens is, if you haven't used the number in a week, it just deactivates and it issues you another number. Like, you can keep selecting a new number for yourself. So I used to do it like when I had like difficulties with like, it's just basically overbuilding in my head my connection with the man. I was like, well, if he doesn't message me for a week, then my number just dies and we were never meant to be. Because if I was supposed to be with this guy, he would message me. Like, I would know within a week what the plan is. So if he doesn't message me in a week, the number dies and he has no access to me ever again. And I don't have to block and delete him because that number doesn't exist anymore. So I would do that. I would just do that because I was like, okay, he can't contact me. I can't contact him. And I've given him a week, which is very generous, actually. I don't recommend giving men a week, just FYI. I don't think that's an FDS rule as well. I honestly think the second that they fuck up is when you should block and delete them. But back then I was like still trying to figure out my own version of boundaries. And I found that text now help keep me grounded because I was like, well, at the very least, I know I gave them a week. And if I ever think back to it, I'd be like, well, who needs a week to respond to someone?
That's such a good idea. I know that FDS is also in our handbook recommended that people get a Google phone number.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As a backup so that even if you're going on dates, like if you give them the phone number because let's say you need to text each other when you're trying to get from A to Z, you can actually be communicated with, but they don't actually have your real phone number. And that's a built-in level.
Exactly. But that's the thing. Some of them might still be more pushy about like why I don't, because I guess sometimes with Google phone numbers, if you receive a call from them, it just says like unregistered caller or something like that. It doesn't like give you their number. However, with text now, you do get a number. So they will get a number and they will get a number to text and they'll get a number to call. It's just that number is like a temporary number. So like if they don't message it in a week, it just deactivates. And I mean, honestly, you can deactivate it anytime, but it just, if you don't use that number for more than a week, it deactivates. I don't know if that app is still around, but I thought that was a really neat app when I was like in the dating game. I used to use it a lot. I can't now I don't have access to that particular app store. So I'm like, okay, fine. I can't get that app back. But I honestly think that's one of the very useful apps besides Google phone. You can always get like a Skype number or a Google number. Like there's always other options. But I just find that this is like a cheap, free way for you to do that as well. Again, same thing with boundaries. If it's like, you're the kind of person who gives men too many chances and you're still learning how to like build your boundaries and like be ruthless with them. This is an app where if you don't message them for a week and you don't hear back from them for a week, the number goes. So you don't have any way of contacting them. Don't save their number in your contacts, obviously, because that defies the purpose of having this kind of app.
That's a seat of honor. That's a seat of honor. They haven't earned that seat.
I normally don't even save their number. I mean, I never save their number, to be honest with you, unless like I feel like I'm going to meet them more than one time. I don't bother. Unless it's useful to me, unless it's like, his name is Brad. I'll be like, Brad gives you legal advice.
Right. Exactly. That's a totally different scenario. But this is the case that we're trying to build the case to you, listener, that there is absolutely no fucking reason to give any man the benefit of the doubt. Do not give the benefit of the doubt. That was literally what Ted Bundy would rely on. Like, he was so charming. He was so well spoken. He was so well dressed. And that's how he was able to, dismember and slaughter like dozens of women, right? And that is, again and again, that's the prototype for every man who's a total psycho, is like, they tend to be charming. They tend to be really persuasive. They tend to have all the answers to like any sort of argument you might present to them as to why you don't want to do something. They have so many like seemingly reasonable responses because they have been practicing this over and over again. And so the idea is you never want to give the benefit of the doubt. And like, also, here's the thing. Let's say you are just paranoid. What's wrong with that? I don't understand why we're made to feel guilty about being paranoid about the fact that our literal lives are on the line every fucking day. Why are you trying to make us feel guilty about, being a little nervous around that?
I would assume that a lot of people want to get into it with good faith. But the thing is, you can't have good faith with bad faith actors. Like, you just can't, So, like, you can't do that with people who are going to manipulate your kindness. Like, you need to start developing a sense of self-preservation. Because we aren't giving you this advice because we're like, oh, we just want to create an epidemic of femcells or whatever nefarious thing society thinks of us. Like, we're not doing this out of like, we have nothing left we're just doing this for shits and giggles. You know what I mean? We're doing this because there's a reason to be cautious and conscious. There is a reason to worry about how men proceed and act around you, because the kinds of information that you're telling them is not necessarily information that is good for them to have. And especially with the person you haven't built a bond or a connection with. And also, a lot of people who are dating these days are not necessarily dating people that have been vetted by their social circle. You know what I mean? It's not like a friend or someone they know from their own existing social circles. Like, they're going and meeting strange men, hanging out with strange people. Even someone from work, you really don't know them until you date them. You know what I mean? You really don't know who you're getting just because you work with them in an office or something. I know a lot of situations of people, working in many male-dominated spaces as well. Like, I know a lot of people who thought like their male friend at work was their friend and then went to have like a one-off drink with them and were like roofied, assaulted, all sorts of things have happened as a result of trusting that friend. And sometimes they worked in countries where the men were not fired. They were just redistributed, reshuffled to another division.
I was going to say, and a lot of men are aware of, the fact that they can earn their ways of trust through work. It's like a lot of these men are very well aware of like the fact that we're suspicious, the fact that we're nervous, because it's common sense, it's survival instinct over millennia. So they have become accustomed to like, oh, hey, but we're friends from like the softball league, or, but no, I'm just Joe from accounting. You can trust me because all they need is one chance to literally fuck you over. And I'm thinking about here, like, if I may share a personal story, Diana, I grew up outside of a small town of like 800, but I still grew up like 10 miles outside of that town. It's a farming community. It's a very rural, agricultural, sort of far from the Manning crowd kind of place. And we ended up combining various schools from various towns because, of course, the population just wasn't there. And so one of the towns over that we combined with, my brother's first girlfriend was from there. And she was a year ahead of me. She was one of the sweetest, most popular girls, super kind, super loving, very talented athletically, all the things, right? Please tell me why 10 years later, I open up the news to find out her husband literally murdered her while their toddler was in the house and proceeded to dismember her and put her into tubs, like storage tubs. Yeah, he's in prison for life now, obviously. But like, I will never forget, like, such a beautiful spirit. She was beloved by the community. She was actually like the town, the Miss So-and-so, she was nominated of the town one year. So she was really, really a wonderful, beloved member of the community. And like, just to know that somebody could literally, from their own husband, who they've given a child to, who they've built this life with, right? Like, not only that he would murder her, but he murdered her in the home with their child present and then proceeded to dismember her. And it's like, ever since I heard that story, I was just like, you can't be too careful with these men, because the greatest danger to any woman is a man that resides under her own roof. And that was never brought home more clearly than, and I still think of her, and I pray she's at peace, because what an awful, awful way to go. But like, women, this is what we're talking about when we're saying like, oh, don't be paranoid. Excuse me, my one wild and precious life is on the line. And are you going to be able to get that back for me if I'm in a situation of extreme danger? Like, you know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, all these people want to have opinions, and they all want to tell you how you should and shouldn't behave in the world. But they're not the ones who have to live with the consequences if things go sideways.
You're not going to be at your funeral and be like, well, foolish me, I told her to go and meet that guy, and like, it's on me, but sorry. You know, they're never going to admit to that, so.
Right? They're like, oh, my bad. Oh,
You died for nothing.
Exactly.
And the other thing, like years and years and years ago, when I worked in like a completely different industry, I mean, you know, like I think a lot of people at some point when you're doing your college jobs, you work at like a Wendy's or a Dairy Queen or like a waitress or whatever. So I had one of those kinds of jobs. And like my coworker at that space, like it was my first day there, I remember. And it was her first day there too. And I believe, I have a feeling that she was undocumented. Okay. And because of the reaction that she had to this incident that I'm about to tell you. And basically, there was like a manager, like a person who was in charge of us, and there was like a head manager above him, essentially. And this is what I mean about men protect each other even if they know what's going on, right? So this manager, I think he came from the same country that she was from. And so he got like her phone number because he was like, oh, you know, a new immigrant from my country, like I will help you out or whatever, right? And then she was like, yeah, cool. She takes his number. And the next day she comes into work and she's like, whatever you do, don't ever stay anywhere alone with that guy. Like, don't be in any room alone with him. And I was like, why? What happened? And she was like, basically, and she showed me her text messages, and he had sent her like very lewd messages, like dick pics, like, I want to, you know, like fuck you against the counter kind of messaging. And she was obviously terrified. And I believe she was a single mom as well. And I was like, you have to do something about it. You have to tell like the guy above him. You know what I mean? Like, somebody needs to know because this is not okay. And she was like, no, I can't do that because he's the most valuable employee right now at the company. They're not going to fire him. They're going to get rid of me. And I need this job because I'm undocumented. So I can't, I mean, we shouldn't say I was undocumented, but you know what I mean? I could tell because she really needed that job. She really needed that job. And like, I remember just feeling horrible for her because she couldn't do anything about it. She couldn't challenge him. She couldn't complain to the guy above us. Basically, what ended up happening was that this woman, like, you know, I asked her if she wanted me to help her. And she was like, no, there's no way that you're going to be able to tell this to them without, you know, implicating me and letting them know that it was me. And because this guy is like, you know, right under the head of department, the head of department is not going to fire him. And I knew she was telling the truth because, I mean, we're two new employees. It takes nothing for them to get rid of us and replace us with someone else. You know what I mean? Like, he was established. He had way more seniority. And I had a feeling that he was used to doing this because, I mean, imagine the audacity to be able to do that to someone who was there on the first day of work. just because she's from your country. Like, she's a brand new employee. So clearly he had gotten away with it with other employees before because he had the audacity. Like, I mean, it's like extremely, I can't even imagine doing that to someone on their first day at the job. That means you're so used to doing it, right? And like, obviously he had gotten away with it before because the people above didn't do anything about it. It was like a standard practice with him. And I mean, I think he never came for me personally because maybe he sensed, also because the first week I was there, I kind of got into a verbal spat with another guy who was working with me. And I was like, don't fucking talk to me like that. And that kind of terrified some of the men.
I was going to say, it was remember your BDE, Diana? Your big daddy energy? That scares a lot of them off.
I kind of set like a boundary with that guy like very early on where I was like, don't fucking touch me and don't get all touchy-feely with me, with somebody else, not even him. I don't know you like that. I've been working here less than a week. I don't like people touching me. Okay, this is just in general. I don't like people touching me, especially people I don't know. And he got really scared because like he was like very jokey and friendly with me, and I was like, we're professional colleagues. You're not my friend. I'm here to do work.
Well, and here's the other thing. First of all, this woman like was already vulnerable because she was a single mother. Okay, and they look for that. And she was doubly vulnerable because of her status, her undocumented status. And this is why they ask you the most inappropriate questions, because all they need is one little piece of information about you. Oh, you live alone, and I'm dropping you off at your home address. All I have to do is come back in 10 hours when it's the middle of the night, and who's going to know? You know what I mean? Like, that's how predators think, and you can never know who is a predator at first sight, And like, the best ones are the ones who are the most concealed.
Also, in her situation, he presented it as help, but really he was finding information, right? Because he was like, oh, you immigrated here on your own? It's just you and your son? So he was kind of gauging, he was like, how many men are in her social circle, right? Like, does she have brothers? Does she have another man who will come and beat me up if I do this kind of shit? Oh, she's alone. Oh, she immigrated alone. She's new to this country, doesn't really speak the language. Maybe she's one of those women who needs a kind of guy to hang on to like protect her or whatever, So he kind of went after, like, that's the thing, right? He went after her because her status was threatened and mine was not. And he didn't want to take that chance because he'd already seen that I was more than willing to put up a fight with somebody who was disrespecting me. So I think he just thought it'd be much harder to get me to keep quiet. And so he didn't even try that with me.
That's why they say too, like, for example, they talk about like spatial awareness when you're walking. So this was something I really learned from living overseas for so many years, was like how to walk with a lot of purpose, with my head up. My head is swiveling constantly. Like, it looks like I'm the most suspicious motherfucker on the planet, because I am. When I'm out in the world alone as a woman, even though I'm a very tall, very like a statuesque woman. I mean, I'm sort of built like a Valkyrie, But even in spite of that, I don't take it for granted. I am a woman. And so I'm constantly scoping out my surroundings. If I hear something behind me, I stop, I turn around and I look. I've startled men before because they aren't expecting me to like square up to them on the street. But it's like, I'm making it clear. And this is something that Gavin DeBecker has said and various serial killers have talked about. It's like, you make it clear that you are on your guard, that you are watchful and mindful, and that you cannot be caught unawares, because the greatest advantage to a predator is the element of surprise. Watch any nature show. That's what you'll see. The predators that get their food are the ones who are the sneakiest about it. And that's what male predators do as well. So when I'm walking around on these city streets, I am just like the most suspicious motherfucker. And I make it clear, like, everybody's under my surveillance. I'm watching you. I've got like big teacher energy when I'm on the streets, like, I'm watching you. I got the two fingers. I'm like the two fingers are looking at my eyes, and then I'm looking back at you. And what can I tell you? Since I've really taken on this persona, it's really a persona that I'm donning, right? When I'm out in the streets, like, I don't really get bothered anymore. I hear so many women talk about getting catcalled and this and that, and it's not like looking real fine. You know what I mean? It's the general attitude that I give off, where I'm just like, I will fuck you up. I don't care if I get fucked up in the process. I'm going to fuck you up too. You want to make it as costly as possible for them to fuck with you. And that's why this is such a great example, Diana, of your work colleague, because she had no cost. There was no cost to him to accost her.
Exactly. And I think, again, she came in it with a very naive and very like, oh, he's a fellow immigrant from my homeland. Like, he probably means the best for me. Maybe I should. Like, for me, I just never take men's help because I know it comes with strings. Like, even if I were to meet another man from my home country, like, he was like, first of all, no other group of men who have screwed me over more than men from my own home country. So if a man from my home country offered me help to begin with, I'd be like, suspicious. Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
Well, hey, that's not the truth though. And of course, I have to say, like, from what I read from the news stories that do come from those parts of the world, it's like horrifying. It's just absolutely horrifying.
Yeah. No, I don't trust them at all. And also, I make it very difficult for them to help me. Like, that's the thing, right? Like, if a man was asking me for his number, I'm like, I have a primary registration fee of like $2,500. I can put you on the roster. That's how much it would cost you. And they don't know whether I'm kidding or not. And I'm like, no, I'm dead serious. Truly, the men with good sense of humor will pay that, honestly, because they're like, I'm amused. I'm intrigued, woman. I want to know more. But the ones who are wasting your time are going to be like, you're just being a pricey bitch. Fuck off. And I'm like, okay, bye. Nobody wants to talk to you. If I can weed you away, I'm happy to do that. At the very least, I make a good chunk of money. You know what I mean? But I make it very expensive. The barrier to entry should always be high. Like, most of the time, I'm not interested in talking to men at all. I don't really register them as an equal species. Like, to me, engaging with them is like, I just feel like I'm just not that interested. I don't know how to say it. They're just very boring most of the time.
Yeah, it's very it's very cliched, and it's very scripted, and
Yeah.
that's never been how I connect with people. I've always been like,
No. The sneak attack of love works much better on me, where it's like you're just naturally engaging with me in conversation that is meaningful. And I don't expect that you're trying to be like, if I already feel a natural vibe with you, and at the end of that conversation, you're like, I really enjoy this conversation. Like, why don't we keep it going over dinner sometime? I'd be like, oh, that's smooth.
wow, hell yes. It's really amazing. It's amazing to see like the barrier up to entry for them is so high, and yet really the bare minimum of behavior is also so low. Like, just treat me like you would treat a nice little old grandpa sitting on his front porch, and we're probably going to get along. But they can't even do that.
Yeah. No, they can't. They just turn shit really sexual, really upfront, or they're just extremely boring in the conversation. It's like all you did was nod and shake your head and listen, and they're like, "Oh my god, I've never had a woman listen to me like this before. We must go out." I'm like, "No, the last thing I want is for a man to monologue at me for an hour. That's like my worst nightmare. That's the seventh layer of hell for sure."
Absolutely, absolutely.
But that's the thing, right? Like, you have to be careful. Like, I'm always gauging, why does this person want this information? And I honestly am the pro white lie territory. Like, if a man asks me questions that I think are invasive, like, how many people do you live with? Do you live alone? Like, just things that I'm like, I don't know you, and I haven't been dating you long enough for you to know those things about me. Like, I'll just wake up and I'll be like, well, I stay with this person. I always include men. I always include like a man that stays in my house that I'm like, oh, I have to go back home or my brother is going to be really mad.
I love the white lie, and that's really hard for me. And I appreciate you bringing that up again and again, because I think you're absolutely right. Of course, my goody two shoes Catholic background is like, a lie. But honestly, I've had to lie to get out of some of the worst situations in my life. And I've come to realize like women need to learn how to lie. It's a survival tactic. It's not some sort of moral failing on your part. It's a moral failing on society that we're put into such situations where we have to lie to get out of serious trouble. Okay, that's not on you in those kinds of moments.
Hey, and women have been telling all kinds of stories since biblical days. Like, this is not, I didn't have sex with someone else. This is the son of God, okay? Like,
Oh, Diana.
so people have been coming up with all sorts of things. I don't feel the same. I don't know. Maybe this is a sociopathic side of me, but I don't feel that kind of guilt about lying to them when I feel like my safety is at stake. Because at that moment, I'm more invested in self-preservation. And at that point, I'm like, well, what is the worst case scenario playing out here, right? Like, what if they stalk me? What if they get my number through someone else that is not trusted, not vetted? Also, by the way, outside of my inner circle, nobody has my personal phone number. My workplace doesn't have my personal phone number. I have like a chain of, vetting strategies, even with the people that I know, so that even by accident, like a pick me girl, first of all, I don't really know that many pick me's, but even if like, there was a pick me associated with me who's like, I want to set you up with my friend. And like, I turn her friend down and the friend goes to her and was like, hey, can you give me her number or whatever? Like, she won't be able to because she doesn't have my number. Nobody has my number. You know what I mean? So it's set to that level because you really have to be persistent. Like, even in business, like, I don't want people calling me on my days off. So my business phone is shut when I'm not working. My number that's for my work registration, the number that I have for my personal stuff, completely different. So I always keep it that way.
Diana, also, I like this idea of like the white lie of like, I've got a brother, my cousin's living with me, or, my uncle, blah, blah, blah. I think you should always have a male in your household, an imaginary male, and a dog.
Yeah, my dog hates men is a great one because there's a lot of dogs that hate men.
Actually, my dog does hate men, and it makes me so sad because, like, I mean, I'm sad because I'm like, why do you dislike men so much? Like, it makes me feel bad for what he might have been through because I adopted him at one from a very nice family that had a father and a mother, but like, for whatever reason, like, he's very suspicious of men, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna trust your judgment. And I'm also really glad that I ended up with a dog who's just like, I don't fuck with men because I think that's the natural deep. Like, if an animal's instincts, a pure animal instinct who can't go through like all these layers of justification and rationalization. If their automatic instinct is dude bad, like Who am I to argue?
Honestly, Rose's dog, I feel like you're a very sound judgment. Like you have assessed what is the apex predator and you're like, I'm behaving properly. Like we are the only species that have to mingle and have sex with our apex predator. And I don't think most of us ever contend with the fact that the thing that is most likely to kill us is the thing that we're also trying to find a romantic relationship with. So your dog is actually a very sound mind because it's assessed what is the biggest threat. And it's like, yep, this irrational creature is probably it.
It's true. And, I know amongst men, like, they all love Louis C.K. And I'll never forget when my brother sent me, like, one of Louis C.K.'s bits where he's like, women are the only one who have to go out with, like, they're the most dangerous predator alive. And they're like, hey, let's go for dinner. Like, let me get all dressed up and do my hair. And, like, let's hope it works out for the best. But it's like, when your life is on the line, how dare you act like it's better to give someone the benefit of the doubt than, like, give yourself the benefit of the doubt that your instincts are right. And this is why we're always, always, always talking about Gavin de Becker's The Gift of Fear. I've never read a better book. The examples he gives are stunning. In the first chapter alone, where he talks about the woman who's bringing her groceries up to her apartment, and there's a man like loitering outside, and he's like, oh, I forgot my keys. And she's like, okay, well, but he's like, come on, you can be a neighbor. I'll help you bring your groceries up. And like just keeps finding ways to keep on her tail and gets his way into the apartment and then ends up raping her, of course, like because that is the playbook and they know it, but they rely on us doubting our own best instincts that have been cultivated for millennia. Women, our instincts are first best defense against any and all predators who are attempting to come for us. Trust those instincts.
Yes. Oh my God. And also, like, that's the thing, right? When we talk about like general red flags, it's like invasiveness, like the invasion of privacy, just being very nosy about your personal life. Like, I don't appreciate this from strange people. Like, leave men, I don't appreciate this from people I don't know in general. Like, whenever people ask me questions, sometimes, honestly, in that moment, if I don't want to give them an answer, I will just make up one. I do that all the time because sometimes I'm like, if I know for a fact that I'm not going to befriend you and we're not going to have a long lasting relationship of any kind, friendship, romantic, whatever, I feel no stress at all about lying to you because I'm under no obligation to follow up on that relationship. I honestly don't care because some people, you know what, we have this concept, like in a lot of cultures, they have this concept of like the evil eye. Have you ever heard of that? The evil eye?
Yes, yes.
The concept of it is just like you don't want to give people too much of your business because you don't know who is like enviously putting the hexes on you. You know what I mean? Not that it's like not that it's necessarily a hex. Like obviously it's just like I don't want that energy around me. Like I don't want people to know every last thing of what I do. Like if anything, I'm so proud of my accomplishments. I share them with my inner circle and the people who are important to me. I feel no obligation about sharing what's going on with other people. If to the outside, like the outermost circle of my social connections, if what they think about me is I'm an exceedingly boring person with nothing going on, I'm fine with that.
You've done your business right. Exactly. It's true. I love this idea. I think moving in silence is so important. And if I may, Diana, I want to read one of our listeners in this last week's podcast. One of our listeners posted a response. And again, I'm always listening to what our listeners like write. So again, if you want to post comments, like please know that I am listening. And the most recent one said, Rose, if you haven't already, could you elaborate on the process of coming from your background towards creating a life that you love? I just don't know how to propel myself forward spiritually and emotionally and retire generational resentment to make room to fully commit to giving myself a good life. How to unlearn guilt and shame, I guess, the age old question. Dear listener, this was such a sweet question, and I really felt such a connection with you when I read it because it's like, boundaries. Boundaries are how we create and how we break these generational traumas. It's how we create our best lives. It's how we break away from the evil eye. I bring this up because my sister has the most evil eye. And it's devastating to me because she's the only sister I have. She's my big sister. She's the oldest in our family. And, I worshiped her growing up and I gave her chance and time again. Not only was I let down, I was deeply wounded. And it was only after both of our parents had passed away that I finally was like, you know what? I don't have to let this bullshit in my life anymore. I don't need to let this evil eye be present because, she is the most envious and grasping of my life. She thinks my life should be hers. She doesn't understand why she doesn't have my life. And she thinks it's so unfair that I do. And what I found is since I put boundaries in place and I live my life in silence, what she's able to glean comes from, the one brother I talk to or her son, my nephew. I still keep him in my life, although we're going to be having a conversation soon about minding my business and not sharing it with all and sundry, aka his mother, because she's always pumping him for information. But he's younger and he hasn't learned all these things yet, so I'm giving him some grace, but only some. I'm getting to the point where I'm just like, listen, you're no longer going to have access to me if you can't learn to guard my information from your mother. There's a reason I don't talk to her. There's a reason I don't tell her what's going on in my life, because since I stopped talking to her, since I put boundaries, very firm boundaries in place, and it took me a very long time, but since I put those firm boundaries in place, my life has only improved by immeasurable leaps and bounds. Like, it's amazing. If I look back 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when my mother was still alive and she was still in my life, because of course I was always sort of like blackmailed by my mom or emotionally, guilted into still forgiving my sister for all of the fuck shit she'd put us through. My life was so miserable. I was like at the worst of my alcoholism and my drug intake and like my life was so terrible on every single level. And I literally felt like I was drowning. And after my mom died, and I really came to realize like how thoroughly that sister had betrayed not only me, but our mother. And I don't know if I ever would have cut her out from my life if it had just been on my account. I think I'm way too capable of just swallowing so much shit and pushing through. But when you fuck with our mother, when you cannot, even in her dying days, show the smallest modicum of empathy or compassion, when it's only ever about you, even as our mother is on her deathbed, what is the point of having you in my family life? What good are you? All you do is bring ruin and evil. And so to our dear listener who asks, like, how do you move beyond the guilt and shame? I'm still working on that myself, but I'll tell you what, having shitty people be yeeted from my life has been the best way for me to go about healing and giving myself the grace that I've needed for so long.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, you know what I've realized? Like, I think that when you're on the verge of your like glow up stage, it has to be done privately. When we think about like creating a safe space, we're always thinking about it in collaboration with other people. I think part of having a safe space for yourself is creating a space for yourself where you feel safe to try things without the scrutiny of other people. I think for me, when I was turning my life around as well, what I found was I always felt like this weird sense of obligation towards like informing the people who are closest to me about everything that I was up to. And honestly, even with the people who I'm closest to, I've really pulled back on how much I tell them. Not because I believe that they have some like evil energy towards me, but because like I now see it as like I needed other people to validate my choices. And part of me telling them was like seeking their validation in my choices. And now I approach my life with a lot more conviction. I don't necessarily need people to validate my choices. So I only share things once they're already there on the verge of happening, or like or it's something that's already happened. You know what I mean? Most of the time, now when I look back at it, I'm like, the best thing you could do for yourself is move in silence, is be guarded about exactly who you're telling what to. Like things like, okay, like when I wanted to get back in shape and go to the gym, right? Even without meaning to, I'm not saying that this is like a mean thing that people intend, that they're trying to sabotage you and prevent you from reaching your goals. But sometimes when you have been a person who hasn't been very consistent in the gym and you've lacked discipline and you want to go to the gym, but you're hanging out with the people and like you realize, oh my God, it's 8 p.m. I need to go hit the gym. And like your friend is like, no, why don't you just stay for like another drink? Or like, no, why don't you just skip today or whatever, right? Like it becomes hard for you to build that discipline because you don't want to disappoint your friend. And so you kind of give in to them and you kind of like don't hold yourself to that standard and discipline because you don't want to hurt people's feelings. And so I often had to create this environment of like, instead of telling people I'm going to the gym, which again seems less serious and something that's skippable, I say, I'm so sorry, I have an appointment. Vague. Appointment could mean anything. Dentist appointment, work appointment, blah, blah, blah. Usually they don't ask me to elaborate. I just say I have an appointment. God, I can't miss it. Sorry, I gotta go. And usually they won't ask me to cancel because appointment always sounds more official than I need to go to the gym. You know what I mean? Part of having boundaries with people is you have to stop over explaining yourself to other people. When I was younger, I really did this because I felt the need to justify my decision making to everyone around me. And I remember I straight up had a friend once ask me, she was like, why do you need to give a reason for everything? Like, why do you need to let us know every aspect of your decision making process? Until she pointed it out to me that way, I had no idea I was even doing it. Once she pointed out, I couldn't stop seeing how I was doing it. I was doing it all the time, And so I learned not to have to justify my decision making to other people. Also, I started paying attention to how people respond to the good things in my life. Like there are people in my life, like my family members, who I thought were on my side, but then when I would tell them something really good that was going on, they always found a way to like shit talk it in some way. And they're like, oh, well, but you're not getting paid that much. And like, oh, well, whatever, I'm sure it won't work out or whatever. And I was like, that's such a strange response to have to someone who's sharing something good with you. Like, why can't you just say, cool, congrats? Like if I was bursting with envy because somebody got to meet, I don't know, the ghost of Alan Rickman or something, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, like it was just a ghost anyway. It wasn't the real thing. You know what I mean? I was like, that's so cool.
Yes, yes, exactly. I've moved us away from talking about heterosexual males and dating for a minute because, and I'm glad you bring up this example of your own family as well, because I think a lot of the practice comes in setting boundaries with men. A lot of the practice has to come from like you have to build that muscle on the everyday basis. Who's in your life on an everyday basis? Typically your family and your friends. And it's not that they necessarily have ill intentions. Some do, a la my sister, but others are just kind of more of like the neutral, like, oh, we'd rather hang out with you than have you go to the gym. Like, it can wait for another day. Well, that kind of attitude means that all of a sudden you miss the gym for a week, a month, a year. Like, that's how quickly you can backslide. And so if you practice this muscle of like not over explaining yourself, not justifying your decisions, simply keeping things as vague and as private as you need to satisfy people's fucking nosiness, because people are so nosy. You know what? I'm nosy, but I've learned to rein it in because it's inappropriate most of the time. Unless I'm with like really close friends who I can tell need to say something, but they don't feel comfortable saying it, I might be like, listen, I can tell something's up with you. I just want you to know whatever you say stays in secret between us. There is no judgment. I love you and I'm here for you. And oftentimes that's all they need to be like, oh my God, I'm so glad you said that because XYZ. But learning in our own private lives with our people who are most intimately associated with us, learning how to just say like, I'm going to have to pass, et cetera, et cetera. That's how you work up towards having really concrete boundaries with men when you get into the dating market. And I think that's just, it's a domino effect where everything in your life improves and you will see the proof in the pudding once you start acting accordingly.
Boundary setting is a muscle. It takes time. And I think that there is some truth to that. You have to start with a position of testing it out with people in your own inner circle. Like, again, I don't assume everybody has ill will towards me, but no one is more accountable for the way that my life goes than I am. Like, I need to be accountable towards my exercise, my health practices, my work life, my mental health. Like, literally, I'm the person who's responsible for this. And like that affects who I'm going to date and stuff as well. Because if I have no boundaries with them, I'm going to neglect myself in the process. And so what we would say is just practice it as a muscle and eventually you will get there. It's never overnight. You know what I mean? This is not like a thing that happens. Even sometimes I backslide. Like, I'm usually quite good at setting boundaries, but every now and then I meet someone who has a uniquely manipulative, convincing strategy that I haven't experienced before. And I'm like, wow, new curveball, surprise question on the quiz. I was not prepared for this level of the examination.
The universe is always testing us to see if we've learned the lesson so we can move on to the next level. At least that's been the case for me. Like, every time I finally feel like I've gotten a handle on a behavioral or like, spiritual practice, then a new, like you say, a new situation comes that's really the old situation with a new twist. And how the outcome comes about is whether I'm able to like meet it where it's at and transcend it, or if I'm going to backslide and like have to learn the lesson again. Because you will keep encountering the same situations until you learn your lesson. I feel like that's how the universe, I mean, I know the universe is chaos, okay? But I've had so many weird things in my life happen where it's like, wow, this keeps coming up until I finally like manage to set my boundary, say no, whatever the case may be, until I found a way to actually turn it towards my advantage. It keeps coming back, like almost like taunting me, like, have you learned your lesson yet? No? All right, bitch. Well, here's another chance to learn it. And honestly, it's really been it's almost like a video game approach, like even if you lose, you can try again, but the point is, even if you lose, you have to make sure you're still alive. So operate with that being your baseline. Like, I have to make sure I'm alive and well with whomever is dealing with me. And then we can see about, setting up further boundaries to further benefit you as time goes on. But it's a learning process and it's a muscle that we have to work out. Diana, I know we're almost out of time. Is there anything else we should bring up before we wrap up for today?
I think we covered most of it. I think that we have everything that we wanted to say. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think, even with strange people, the most important thing always is if you don't have an explanation, but you feel weird anyway, honor the weird feeling. Always. Honor the weird feeling. Like, if you feel like there's no justification for why I feel uncomfortable around this person, your body is reacting before your mind does. Trust your body. Same way, like if you were to see a volcano, you wouldn't just be like, how interesting, a volcano erupted. You're going to run because that's common sense, right? So at the end of the day, just do what makes sense for you. And I don't really feel like you need to justify your behavior to other people if it's in the interest of your safety. Nobody knows what you're going through except for you, right? So you're the only person that needs to look after yourself and be accountable to yourselves.
Trust and believe that you are your own best ally and act accordingly.
Yep. Prioritize yourself. And as always, to all the scrolls, here's a boundary. Die mad.
I'm mad. See you next week.
Bye.